in 3, 2, 1.
Well, hey everybody, Pat Mesiti here, and we are really living in some turbulent, crazy, ridiculous, evil, abominable, disgusting, low times, and that's just what's happening out of Dan Andrews' mouth. Today, I've got two special guests, Senator Malcom Roberts, a great freedom fighter, a great stalwart, a great defender of the people of Australia and people of faith, and of course, my great friend James Macpherson from Spectator magazine and also from Sky News. But before we get started, I want to remind you of some words. One, words from Simon and Garfunkel, where he said, "Fool said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows." And then I want to remind everybody of a story in the Bible, and please bear with me because I know many of you people, you don't come from the Christian faith, and this is a multi-faith, multi-believer. We've got agnostics, atheists, everybody on here. But there's an interesting story where people say that Peter betrayed the master. He betrayed him when he said, "I never knew him." But here's one of the interesting things that people forget. There was another disciple at that scene, and his name was John the Beloved. John the Beloved said nothing. You see, Peter betrayed the master with words, but John betrayed him with silence. And sadly, right now, what is happening is we have succumbed to this culture that wants to keep us silent. What we've seen this week in Andrew Thornburn and the Essendon Football Club is nothing more but religious persecution, and it's targeting Christians at the hands of dictator, despot, Comrade Dan. Firstly, let me say that Andrew Thornburn was not at City on a Hill Church in 2013 when that post was written. Secondly, these are not words that came out of his mouth. And even if they were, he is entitled to his belief. The vilification of what he has had to go through and what many Christians are going through right around the world, I might add, the persecution, the murder, the assault, the beatings that have happened, especially in some of the radical Muslim nations. Now, please, my radical Muslim brothers and sisters that are listening here, that is no offense to you. And I will be saying something about Catholic believers as well, in no offense to my Catholic brothers and sisters, but at the misrepresentation of what dictator, I won't call him premier, Dan Andrews says that this is his form of Catholicism. Well, last thing I read, his form of Catholicism is not Catholicism. Number one, why would you have euthanasia? Number two, why would you have the most evil laws on abortion in Australia? Number three, your Catholicism and your so-called love of people didn't extend to the unvaccinated. Let me also add to the thought that Dan Andrews yesterday said, aren't we all children of God? I'm going to answer that for every one of you. No, we're not. No, we are not. We are all creatures of God, but we are not all children of God. Read your Bible. And I'm sorry if that offends people, but I'm sick and tired of the misrepresentation of the scripture. Now, I want to read a verse, so please don't get rocked because I'm reading a verse. The Bible here says this: "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought captive into the obedience of Christ." We have allowed this dictator in this country and many of the Labor Party and also the Liberal Party, where the hell are they, I've got to say? Forgive me for using the word hell. Where are they in this hour? Where are they when Christians and people of faith are losing their jobs? And I'm telling you, if you're a person of faith, your job is at risk. What I want to know is this: why are we not doing what Andrew Womack said when he said, we must preach the gospel, but we must also fight to protect the right to preach the gospel? I believe it was Dietrich Bonhoeffer who said, silence in the face of evil, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. I'm adding this bit. Silence like a cancer grows. When cancel culture, as we have seen in our world, attacks people of faith, it is evil. But I'm going to say something that's going to get me in a lot of trouble right now. When cancel culture tries to cancel us out, it's evil. When the church and church leaders, yes, the pulpits of our churches are silent, that's an abomination. That is an abomination. We were silent for 2 years, and now it has trickled down. Progressiveness is a Trojan horse that will destroy the church, and it will destroy our Western society. Where are the Bonhoeffers? Where are the Wilberforces? Where are the Finneys? Where are the Whitfields that challenged issues? Our silence will cause us to lose the very thing. I'm going to say this. This is what they're after. This book, they want to silence it. I said 12 months ago, when that dictator, Brad Izzard, they are all of the same spirit. They are all of the same ilk. Pharaohs, and might I say, Antichrist spirits. I'm not saying they're the Antichrist. I'm talking about the philosophy, the control, the operative of that Antichrist spirit. They don't change, and they manifest themselves in different people. When Brad Izzard had a go at Bishop Marmari, I said before, and I'll say it again, what they want to do is silence what you speak. And I know there's some preachers watching me right now, and you need to hear me. They want to silence what you preach if they haven't already done so. They want to shut down and vilify you for what you believe, and they want to control even what you sing and come out of your mouth. I believe it's time. Andrew Thorburn wasn't even at City on a Hill. He decided to be a person of faith and stand up for what he believed to be his right. And of course, he lost his job. I want to warn you again. No person of faith is safe. We need to be a people now that speak up, even if not for us, for the other persecuted people around the world. I came on here several months ago and spoke of the persecution, and this is persecution by media and by politicians with suits. I'm going to say this, and then I'll turn over to our guests. Demons with suits are still demonic. Now, you read into that what you will. But demonic entities with suits and lipstick are still demonic entities. And I'm talking about the philosophies and the ideologies that are destroying the very fabric of our nation. It started 2 years ago, and we have seen it slowly but surely attack every aspect. And what I might add, why just the Christian church? What about Haneen Drika? She stands up for what she believes. Not a word is said. 7 boys in the Manly Leagues Club, they get belted. They get vilified. An Australian cricketer, he decides not to have beer on him because it offends his faith. He's okay. Why Christians? I'll tell you why. And I'll say it very clearly. Because that name that we believe in is the only name by which we can be saved. Now, this is not a preaching thing, but while I'm at it today, I'm going to go for it. Because the very thing that we are trying to protect, the very thing that some of our Christian leaders are trying to protect through silence, we are about to lose. Well, I've said my piece. Senator Malcom Roberts, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Pat. And I don't know that anyone could top what you just said. That was wonderful.
Well, I think you can. You're a brilliant orator, sir. And how's my good friend James Macpherson there? Brilliant piece this morning, James. Brilliant piece this morning in Spectator magazine.
Hey, Pat. Thanks for having me. And good afternoon, Robert. Good to see you. Malcolm, rather.
G'day, James. Same here, mate. Very good.
Senator, tell us. I'm going to let you guys cut loose today. I'll jump in occasionally, but I want you two guys to cut loose. Senator, what happened this week and why is it dangerous for all people of Australia?
Well, it's dangerous for all people of Australia simply because they're victimising someone based on a religion, on a faith. That's it. And what's more, there's no truth in the article. I mean, as you quite rightly pointed out, Andrew Thorburn wasn't even at the church when the statements were made. He had no association with the church. I mean, that's ridiculous. So there's association by, well, what is it? It's just some kind of association, and they pin it on everyone. This means you at church. It means church, faith people, any religion. It doesn't matter what the facts are. That's what they're doing. They're just trampling over the facts. They're trampling over the real substance.
What concerns you the most about this, James? What concerns you the most? I mean, you're a journalist now. You're a person of faith. James, what concerns you the most? And just share with us a little bit your perspective as a journalist and I might say a great Bible scholar as well.
The thing that concerns me most, Pat, is that none of our political leaders, you're an exception, Malcolm, are willing to talk about principal foundations of society such as freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of association, which all flow out of the great freedom, which is freedom of religion. I note that Matthew Guy, the opposition leader in Victoria, he spoke against Dan Andrews, but his criticism of Dan Andrews was that Dan Andrews is being divisive. In other words, come on, Dan, we just need to be nicer to one another and we all just need to get along. Well, that's not good enough from a Liberal leader. The answer is not unity for unity's sake. The answer is talking about first principles. And the Liberal Party have not been very good at this of late. We need politicians, and Peter Dutton did a little bit, but we need them to speak strongly about the supremacy of freedom of religion, because if you don't have the freedom to hold views, and that's what this is about. Daniel Andrews and the Herald Sun got very upset because Andrew Thorburn held views. And these views, he hadn't done anything, he just had views. And these views were unacceptable. Well, if you are not allowed to hold views, then you're not allowed to speak, and you're not allowed to associate with other people who hold those views. All of your freedoms are then gone. So the freedom of religion is the most important freedom in society. If you don't have that, you don't have any of the other freedoms, because freedom of religion is really the freedom to believe. None of our political class seem to understand this at all, which is, I guess, why they don't speak about it. And we desperately need somebody to stand up and begin speaking about these things. Otherwise, we're in big trouble as a society.
I want to ask
you. Can I come back,
Malcolm?
Pat, to my previous answer?
Yes.
Because I would add something to that. I'd add two things, actually. First of all, the media is the adjudicator here. The media has taken charge, and we've allowed them to do that. Your point cannot be topped today. Your point was that we have allowed this to happen by being silent. Church leaders, political leaders, community leaders. But so far what we've got is a media that's complicit, a media that's driving it. But the fundamental thing of human progress, the fundamental thing of safe societies, secure societies, is rule of law. So I've got eight keys to human progress. The first one is freedom, for all the reasons James just mentioned. And I would argue that above freedom of religion, there's freedom of life, the freedom to live, the freedom to protect life. So then freedom of faith is one of them. But below the freedom, there is rule of law. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. We can't steal off each other. What they're doing here is they're destroying laws, completely destroying laws. Because if you're of one faith, then they decide they'll crucify you. If you're of another faith, we don't see anything wrong with this woman doing this. So what it means is that rule of law has been completely trashed. And they replace it with their own capricious opinions. That's it. So whatever they want to do with their newspapers, with their media, whatever they want to do by some lunatic yelling out loudly, that becomes the new law. That becomes the new standard. Well, that's no law.
It's funny, isn't
you know, go ahead,
James. It's interesting that this entire fiasco began with the media. It was the Herald Sun who dragged Andrew Thorburn's Christian beliefs into the public square. There was a time when Christians were told, keep your religious views to yourself. Well, now the media drag Christians' views into the public square and interrogate them and demand that they give account. So it was actually the media that made a big deal of this, and the media's inability to understand faith. The Herald Sun called Andrew Thorburn's beliefs controversial. He was linked to this controversial church. It wasn't until I pointed it out in an article for Sky News that anyone in media made the connection between his church and the Anglican diocese. It's an Anglican church, but the media reported it as if he was some part of some strange, weird, religious cult. And so you're right, Malcolm, the media are driving this. It's a media who don't understand and have not the slightest interest in understanding the Christian faith. or the church, and that's a major problem for society. And I suppose it's because most of our journalists have been through the education system. They've been thoroughly indoctrinated in leftism through school and through the universities. And so we have a journalist class who really are very ignorant when it comes to Christianity, which is a big problem since Christianity is the foundation of Western civilization, and they're ignorant of it.
I want to jump in here because one of the things that really irritated me was Koshi. Who the heck made Koshi the umpire of faith? And I'm going to nail this because I want everyone to hear this. These guys, Dan Andrews, Koshi, and everyone else, oh, but love. Let me just tell you exactly what this book says. You are to love in truth. We are to speak the truth in love. I don't know anyone in the Essendon Football Club or anyone that I know in a Christian school, even in a church, that's ever been kicked out, in my view, from what I've seen, because of a certain belief or a certain, bent, if I might use that word. And let me just say this. Love is not the be-all and end-all. It is not. Let me tell you what this book is about, and I'm going to hold it up here. Truth. We need to get this through our darn thick heads. You can tell I'm fired up today. It's about truth. And you can't love without truth. Try loving someone in deception, see how that works. And here, let me just tell you, not you two guys, but everyone out there, let me tell you one of the first signs of love. Correction. We have become a culture more obsessed with children's feelings than we are their future, their mental health, and their well-being. Oh, they feel like being a cat today. Let them be a cat. Well, you know what? Cats don't have Apple iPhones and they don't use Netflix. It just boggles my mind. But anyway, is there anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I would add something else that what they're fundamentally doing, the journalists in particular, and politicians who don't stand up, is they're treating people as stupid. They think that they have the right, they have the obligation, they have the duty to tell us what we should think. They exclude some of the news and they sensationalize the rest of it. So people are not stupid, Pat. People would agree with what you're saying. Okay, there might be some people on the control side of politics, that's my term for the left, who would disagree with you because they want to control. That's what the control side of politics does. So, but people are not stupid. It shows the height of arrogance, to be able to think that you can dictate to people what they should and should not think, what is right and what is not right. People of Australia know this is bullshit. They know it's wrong. And they're perfectly capable of thinking for themselves. And that's one of the problems we have in this country. We've got too many self-appointed, self-opinionated people who want to tell people what to think. And what most people do is they just switch off and say, oh, to hell with this lot. But that's not the point. We've got to get, as you said in your core point, we've got to get politicians, we've got to get civic leaders, church leaders standing up and telling the truth.
James and Malcolm, why this hostility against the Christian faith? Why? It doesn't seem to apply anywhere else.
Well, Pat, in a relativistic culture, the church is the pillar of truth. And so the church is a natural enemy of a society that wants to declare that there's no objective truth. The only truth is your truth. The only reality is your feelings. And so that's a problem with the church. Secondly, where socialism begins to permeate through a culture, the family and the church, the two things that stand between an individual and the government. We've seen the family attacked on every front in our culture, and the last remaining blockage between an individual and the state is the church. And so that makes the church a big target. Just back to what you were saying earlier about Koshi, another problem we've got is that we've now got the media telling Christians what the Christian faith should be about. I watched that media where Koshi explained to the pastor of City on a Hill what the Christian faith should teach. Daniel Andrews did a press conference yesterday where he told Catholics what the Catholic faith is all about. And this, to be honest, is a problem for the church. We seem to have a lack at the moment of churchmen in the public square articulating clearly what the Christian faith is all about. At some point, we've got to stop dancing around and trying to say, but we are inclusive and we are diverse, and we need some people to actually explain what the Christian faith is, what we believe, how it benefits society, and rather than ducking and weaving, unapologetically and boldly explain, this is who we are, this is what we believe. But at the moment, the media are telling us what we ought to believe, and the church hasn't quite figured out how to respond to that yet. It's a bit of a challenge for us.
One of the things that amazes me, and again, I know where Malcolm stands, we had Malcom Roberts, Pauline Hanson, and a few other guys in the last 2 years declaring what is biblically based truth, and the pulpits were silent. And then all they did was name call the likes of Malcom Roberts, me, and some degree you. I want to say this, and I know if I haven't upset some people already, I just want to remind them what the Bible says about who ends up in the lake of fire. Cowards. I didn't say that. God Almighty said it himself. He talks about adulterers, drunkards, and we're all. But let me just remind everybody out there, cowards. As a matter of fact, it's the first cab off the rank. And we've been brave from a distance, sticking up our Black Lives Matter stickers up there to a guy that was a criminal, I might add.
And a threat.
And yet,
and a threat.
Pardon me? Yeah,
and a threat. He was a criminal and a threat.
Exactly. And then a mega church in Sydney gets up and publicly lauds him on his anniversary, while Christians are dying in Nigeria by the hundreds and being slaughtered. Cowards. And they ought to call themselves something else, but not a church. Malcolm, how do you feel about that as someone, kind of on the in and on the out looking in at what's happening in the church itself?
Well, you're absolutely correct. I don't think I could say it any better than what you just said. People who are silent when they should be speaking up are cowards, and they will face their own condemnation themselves. They know within, Pat. They absolutely know. There's no escaping that. And deep down, they may not be conscious of it, but deep down, they know. And so that's where the real lake of fire is. That's where the hell is. But going back to your previous question, why are they doing this? The communists want to destroy family. When you have no family, you turn to the government, which is them. When you destroy religion, which is what they want to do, the communists have done this. This is part of their playbook. You turn to government for instructions. When you destroy the nation state, which is what the World Economic Forum and the United Nations are trying to do, and they've admitted it. Don't just listen to me. Yeah. They have admitted that's what they're trying to do. Then you don't turn to just the national government. You turn to the global government. And we've seen what they do. They replace doctors and nurses who care about people with edicts that are about killing people. They also destroy property, because when they destroy property, property rights, then they destroy the ability to work for something, the reward, the recognition. You just work for the state, and that is one road to poverty. And then they also destroying now gender. They're destroying social society. They're destroying civilization. That's what these people want, because above all, they want control. And Pat, you know just as well as I know that always beneath control there is fear. People who try to control others are fearful. That's why solid Christians do not try to control people. They have no need to control people.
No, they don't.
I mean, that's the freedom that Christ's message gives. That's the freedom that Buddha's teachings give. That's the freedom.
Correct.
We may have lost.
Yeah. James, you wrote a brilliant piece today in Spectator. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because when I read that piece, here's the thought that came to me. And I knew it's not one of my thoughts. There is no upside to neutral. None. Tell us about that piece you wrote today, because it was absolutely brilliant, and you were addressing it to churches and church leaders, I'm imagining.
There's an old adage, Pat, that you might not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And for a long time, I think we as the church have said, well, we don't do politics. Well, politics is sure doing us right now. And if we don't start to pay attention, our freedom to preach the gospel is going to be severely encumbered. And so it's time for the church to recognize that what's happening in our culture is not just a passing phase. It's not just a stage we're going through and then we'll return to the good old days. There is a concerted attack on the Christian faith and on the church in particular right now that we need to begin to push back upon. And if churches in Victoria don't start to mobilize people to vote against Daniel Andrews, then God help us all. The Liberals might be hopeless, but at least they don't hate the church. And I think there's a good argument to say that the Daniel Andrews Labor government hates the church. I mean, they brought in laws last year, so-called anti-conversion laws, that made it illegal for a pastor to pray for a parishioner, even at the parishioner's request, to overcome homosexual urges. When the government starts telling you what you can and cannot say to God himself, the government have put themselves above God. And now with Daniel Andrews, as I said earlier, he's which is the media, what a good Catholic is. He said, well, a Catholic is someone who treats everyone equally and treats everyone fairly. Well, Dan Andrews doesn't even do that. He hasn't treated Andrew Thorpe fairly. He didn't treat unvaccinated people fairly or equally. And yet here's Daniel Andrews sermonizing on what a good Christian is. And then his comment, well, we're all God's children. There's never, with the exception of Nancy Pelosi, who said she supported abortion because she was a Catholic, which makes no sense. But with the exception of Nancy Pelosi, there has never been a political leader who has invoked the name of God with less sincerity than Daniel Andrews when he says, well, we're all God's children. Yet tell that to the people who were shot by your police force outside the Shrine of Remembrance with rubber bullets when they were protesting peacefully against your laws. My point is this: when you listen to Daniel Andrews, don't listen to the words, listen to the tone, listen to the spirit. He holds the church and Christians in contempt. Look at what he held. Look at what the Victorian justice system did to the leader of the Catholic Church. And Daniel Andrews has worked out that there's been so much scandal in the Catholic Church that, and that's been well documented, that he can get away with just beating them black and blue because Daniel Andrews says, well, they've lost all moral authority. And so now he believes he can treat the church any way he wants. He will keep going down this path. And if he's voted in again, if he's rewarded for this with re-election, you can bet he will go even harder on the church. And so it's time for the church to finally say, you know what, we're actually in a fight here. And yes, Jesus says, love your enemies, but he doesn't say vote your enemies into power so that they can control you. There's a difference between loving your enemies and being wise about the way we deal with things. So it's time for the church to rise up and say, this is not on. We will not tolerate this. Otherwise, our ability to preach the gospel is going to be increasingly squeezed and hindered. So that was the tone of the article. And I might say that article, from about the moment it went up on the Spectator website, it's resonated with people. If you look at Facebook, it's trending really well. So clearly it's making sense to people, and people recognise the truth in it.
It is.
Can I add to your comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I add to your comments about neutral is really weak? People are not afraid of change. Now, I've led massive change in an industry where they were supposedly afraid of change. And I did that by telling the truth and being firm. That's it. And by leading by example. People took the changes and really ran with them. And if you look at the strong leaders in my lifetime, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, the key point behind them was that you knew where they stood. Even people who disliked Thatcher in Britain, I can remember them many years ago saying, I don't like the woman, but I know where she stands. And what people don't like is uncertainty. And when you're neutral, people don't know where you stand. And I made the observation a few decades ago, I would rather have a dishonest boss than a boss who is weak. Because a weak boss, you don't know where he's going to go, where he or she is going to support you and not support you. And so you're always probing, always trying to find out. The child is continually testing boundaries. They're programmed to do that, to see whether or not you're going to set them some boundaries, and whether or not you're going to do that lovingly. So people are afraid of uncertainty, and that is really a big problem for most humans. And when people are neutral, when leaders are neutral, people have enormous uncertainty. They don't know what is going to happen. That's the core problem.
While we're on the subject of leaders, you know, there used to be a thing called Where's Wally? Where's Albo? This is the guy that at the election said when he was pushed out of his mother's womb, he was brought up with three things, you know, a Catholic, the Labor Party, and the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Albanese wanted to be seen as a friend of people of faith, the Christian faith. Come on. Now, just remember, Catholicism still, you know, they part of the Christian faith. Where's Albanese? And while I'm at it, the Liberal Party. You know, I was a big supporter of Dominic Perrottet, and I preferred him to Brett Gickland. But where is the Liberal Party now? Particularly the voice of someone like a Dominic Perrottet. I'll tell you why he's silenced. Because he's got a Brutus waiting in the wings called Keane. They're setting this guy up, this progressive guy, to get in there. And then guess what? Very same thing's going to happen to Christians. Guys, what do you think about a Prime Minister that's gone AWOL again, just like the former one? He was nowhere to be seen. Where's Albanese in all this? Why is he not speaking up for people of faith? I'm confused.
Albanese is not on his own. Look at Kevin Rudd. Kevin Rudd actually changed his denomination, apparently, to appeal to a bigger group of voters. And where was Kevin Rudd? He was in front of the church most Sundays. That's where he did his media conferences. Because Kevin Rudd was pretending to be a Christian. He didn't behave as a Christian. Scott Morrison is another one. He pretended to be a Christian, but didn't behave as one. Anyone who can do what he did to the people of Australia, tell them that there are no injection mandates while enabling and pushing injection mandates, is a flat-out liar. Scott Morrison was a liar. Bold, barefaced liar, and he pretended to be a Christian. We have Perrottet, we have Morrison, we have Hawke, and we have not Hawke the Prime Minister, but Alex Hawke, Photius, and others who control the Liberal Party. We used to laugh at the Labor Party 30 years ago when they were riddled with factions. They still have factions, but now they've learned how to manage them. I don't like that, but that's what they've done now. So the left has their candidates, the right have their candidates. They take a turn to see who's number one on the Senate ticket, etc., and who's candidate in various electorates. But now the Liberal Party is enmeshed in factional battles. We saw a number of good Conservative MPs tossed out, and because of those battles. The Liberal Party is now a clone of the Labor Party. Their policies are almost identical. I would say they are identical. They're embroiled in factional battles. They no longer represent the people. They're clawing over each other to try and get in front of the TV so that they can pretend to be someone. This is not representing people. This is hijacking people.
James, what happened to the Conservative Party in Australia? I mean, I think you were about to jump in and say something. So,
I was just going to say, if you're waiting for Anthony Albanese to defend the Christian faith, you're going to be waiting a long time.
But wait, he wanted to be seen as a person of faith. Come on, like he wanted to be seen as a person of tax cuts.
But Pat, that's
Morrison.
I know. Well, you know how I felt about him.
Albanese wanted to be seen as a person of faith because the Labor Party, dissecting their loss to Scott Morrison, realised they'd done very poorly in Western Sydney amongst migrants who came to this country with faith, and so they did this big thing about we've got to reconnect with people of faith. It was all window dressing. It was all talk. They never had any real intention of connecting with people of faith, except well, I won't get into what I was going to say. So you're not going to get Albanese, and for that matter, you're probably not going to get anyone in the Conservative side of politics standing up for Christians. But I don't. Well,
I do. Well, Pauline does. She's not. Neither of us are avid churchgoers, but we stand up for people of faith.
But they should, mate. They want our votes. They want our votes. They go to our churches.
That's not why we do it, Pat. We don't do it because there's a vote in it.
Of course.
We do it because it's the right thing to do. And
Okay.
Margaret Thatcher said, you do the right thing and the votes come, but you don't do it to get the votes.
And when they want to, they use Pentecostals. James, let me finish. When they want to, they use Pentecostals. I don't see them waving the Pentecostal banner these days. I'll leave that alone.
So we shouldn't be asking our politicians to stand up for the Christian faith. Leave that alone. Let's ask them to stand up for things that we all agree on, whether we're atheists, agnostics, Christians, and that is freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of association. So because a politician's personal religious convictions or lack thereof are irrelevant when it comes to those three things. If they can't stand up for those three, then they're not worth anyone's vote. And that's the real concern. It's not that, well, they're not standing up for Christians. They're not standing up for freedom of thought, freedom of speech, or freedom of association. Did you know, Pat, that church in Melbourne City on a hill, they've got 8 different venues, I think, where they meet. And some of those venues are in public facilities. As a result of this furor, they're now being threatened with eviction from some of the sites where they're holding Sunday services. Now, that's freedom of association. So we ought to say, look, we're not saying stand up for the Christian faith. We are a pluralistic society. Fair enough. Christians don't expect any special treatment, but we do expect the basics of civil liberties, and that's the freedom to associate with like-minded people. That's where we ought to be fighting this battle, and that's the conversation we ought to be having.
Well, we are having it. My question then is this. So who should be standing up for the Christian faith?
Everyone should be standing up for the Christian faith. Muslims should be standing up for the Christian faith. Hindus should be standing up for the Christian faith, because if they don't, their religion may be next. Their faith may be next. In addition to James's points about the various freedoms, number one is freedom of life, the freedom to live. Number one. And Thorburn stood up for that. Thorburn actually said he was asked to resign due to his association with the church and his view against abortion and homosexuality. They're his views. And he was basically said, he was basically told, you either go with the job or you go with your church. And he said, well, I'll take my faith. Thank you very much. Thorburn's a hero. Thorburn is a man of principle. He's wonderful. So you've got the freedom of faith. And he's backed it to the hilt. You've got the freedom of belief, the freedom of thought, the freedom of speech, the freedom of association, as James has repeatedly hammered today, and quite rightly so, the freedom of movement, the freedom to work where you want to work, the freedom of travel. These are all fundamental freedoms. And what we're seeing impinged on here is the freedom of faith. There's nothing more fundamental apart from the freedom of life. And so many, this is just a forerunner to what is coming. And we've already seen the other freedoms that James has talked about repeatedly. The other freedoms are disappearing. This is about control, Pat. That's all it is. And what we've seen is it's arbitrary control, because, as you quite rightly pointed out, Haneen Zrika has said she's standing on principle and not playing in the, what is it now? Because of a Muslim faith, she's not playing in
the women's AFL.
Yeah, she's not playing in the, what is it? What is that round of football called when it's the
pride jersey thing, I think.
Pride jersey, yeah. Oh, no one says a word. No one says a thing.
You know what's interesting about all of this, and not many people have brought this out yet, but Andrew Thorburn, in his role as chief of the National Australia Bank, he was promoting LGBTQ. In fact, the first ever AFL Pride round was Andrew Thorburn's idea. As the head of the National Australia Bank, he pitched the idea to the AFL, the idea for having the rainbow-coloured 50-metre arcs on the AFL field. That was Andrew Thorburn's idea. In fact, if you go back over the last number of years, the NAB under his leadership repeatedly won awards for its inclusivity and diversity, particularly towards the LGBTQ movement. Now, there's a little lesson here, and that is you cannot appease the woke mob. If you think you can be woke enough to insulate and quarantine yourself from its mob, then you're kidding yourself. So the very thing he promoted has now been the undoing of him. There's a great little lesson for everybody there. You have to fight this thing on principle. And he is sadly a tale of someone who tried to appease the mob and eventually it devoured him.
James, where can we find you? Tell us where we can find you, because I love you. I wake up every morning and I plagiarize everything you write. James, where do we find you? I know you're on Rowan Deans. Hey, by the way, congratulations on Rowan Deans. Well done. Every night there. Saw you last night. You know, I want to give you a shave sometimes, but it's all good.
Well, if you've got access to Sky News, the Rowan Dean Show, or The World According to Rowan Dean, at 9 o'clock, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursday evenings on Sky, is a great program, regardless of the little contribution. But no, you can subscribe to my Substack at jamesmacpherson.substack.com, and every morning there's a fresh article on faith, religion, politics, the kind of things we're discussing here today, and so that'll be a great help for people just trying to understand what's happening in the world and contextualize it, particularly in relation to our Christian faith.
Now, I'm going to bring you both back on. I'm going to bring you both back on in a minute, but I want to talk to everybody for a second here. And look, just let me say, firstly, I'm a person of faith, but I've got people in my world that are of different faiths. I've got Baha'i faith, I've got Buddhists, I've got Muslim, I've got everybody. I've got Jewish people. And a big shout out to my great friend Harry down there. Harry, great brother down there in New South Wales. I've got people in my world that are gay. And to me, that makes no difference to me. I don't care about that. Just don't take away my right, my freedom to be who I am and who others want to be. Now, when saying that, let me just say this. We need to contend for the faith. And I want every leader to listen to me that's out there, Christian leader and other Christians. You have a biblical mandate to contend for the faith. Now, we've taken it upon ourselves to do a tour. Last week we were in Bow Desert. People saying, why are you going to Bow Desert? Why are you going to Toowoomba? Why are you going to Harvey Bay and these regional centres? Because I want to go to where the people are. The big cities have had a big go, and they've had a big go. This weekend, starting Tuesday to Wednesday, we are going to be in Toowoomba. We've bought airtime. Now, if you go to mesitilive.com, it is free. We're starting on Sunday evening, and then following through to Wednesday night, morning and evening. I'm bringing my great friend, David Gilpin, Mark Ironside to share as well, to teach in the morning. Every meeting is different. Every meeting is free. Everybody is welcome. But can I encourage you to go and register? If you know people around Toowoomba, please get there. And listen, it's one thing to post and share, but we've got to show up. We need to pray and believe for a spiritual awakening. The other thing I want to say is this. I've been saying for the last 2 years, Christians, your jobs are in danger. Matter of fact, all of our jobs are in danger. And you need to get financially independent. If you are using yesterday's methods in today's world, you're not going to have it tomorrow. And so every couple of weeks, we hold a financial freedom event. This coming Thursday, we're doing a very special online webinar on how you can build an online business. I'm telling you, this morning I interviewed Gerald Salente, and he said people have got to get financially independent. You've got to get rid, you've got to move away from the international cartel trying to keep you bound with all these pharaohs on top of you. You've got enough smarts, enough ability. Somebody say, Pat, I'm too old. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? Well, it depends on who the coach is. Now, this Thursday, we have a special event with one of the world's top leading online marketers. Come and learn how to get financially free. Get yourself some extra income. Come and learn. Education is not expensive. Ignorance is. And if you go to the link here that's on there, I think it's mesiti.com/DC. We've already got hundreds booked in already. Our Zoom can only take a certain amount of space, and that's not a scarcity kind of tactic. That's how it is. Go there and register. Get your kids, get your teenagers. Even if you've never done it before, come and learn. Equip yourself. I've been saying this for 2 years, and my heart aches because I see inflation going through the roof, people losing their homes, and it doesn't need to be that way if you get a financial education. Malcolm, I'm going to give you, James, I'll give you the final word. I'll give you a word, and then I want to close with Senator Malcom Roberts because I love Malcolm. I love you too, but You're the younger one, so we'll give you, you're the younger. Any final last words for us, James, about this situation and what we can do across the board?
I think the best thing we can do is to keep standing up for our Christian faith, keep getting better at articulating it, and keep explaining why the rights for Christians to believe as they believe are important rights for everybody. And so, as Malcolm pointed out earlier, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, atheist, whatever, we've all got an interest in defending the rights of people to hold whatever views they want to hold, to speak freely, and to associate with like-minded people. Those things build a good and healthy society, and so we ought to continue to advocate for that wherever it is that we are.
Senator Malcom Roberts?
Sure, I've just got 5 points to state
Yes.
briefly. These are from notes we made listening to the Essendon Football Club, or the Essendon board. First of all, the Essendon board said, Essendon is committed to providing an inclusive, diverse and safe club where everyone is welcome and respected. So they exclude their CEO. How safe is it for the CEO if he's a Christian? They're shooting themselves in the foot. The second thing is that, does this mean that because Andrew Thorburn was hung for something he didn't say even before he was associated with the church, does this mean that the next Don's CEO and chairman are going to be responsible from some drunken yobbo in the crowd watching Essendon play? Number 3, Thorburn said he was asked by the board to choose between his position and his association with the church's chair, and he chose his faith. That's the kind of people we need. Essendon is in turmoil right now. We've had several Essendon greats, players, board chairman saying that it's in turmoil. This is why it's in turmoil. Fourth, this is, as you've pointed out right from the start, this is anti-Christian, but more so, it's anti any religion. And
Correct.
So the last point I'm going to leave on is the conflict point is that some religious beliefs necessarily oppose the views and sometimes very existence of these groups. And any articulation of those beliefs will inevitably be interpreted by these groups as hateful. We are now trashing law. We've smashed the law with this and so many other things today. And it's something that you and James have both spoken very strongly about. When you don't have law, it becomes rule of the jungle. We're going back to the dark ages socially, and we're saying that whoever's got the loudest voice, whoever's got the most access to the mouthpiece media, they dictate what is and is not successful. And the rest of you just get trashed. That's what's really at stake here. It is a complete abrogation of freedom, a deserting of freedom. And you are right, Pat. I cannot improve on your opening statements. That was set the tone, and that was what we need to go back to.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, James. Folks, I want to say this. I want to say this with all my heart. Gay people are not our enemies. Transgender people are not our enemies. I'm going to say this. Dan Andrews not our enemy. Peretit's not our enemy. These people are not our enemies. There is a war here, and it's a spiritual war, and I need you to hear me. There's something happening in the soul of this country that is not good. And it is pure evil. Tolerance must be tolerance for everybody, or it is not tolerance at all. So all of you are saying, we want to be tolerated. Great, then tolerate us. Otherwise, the very freedom you want, that can be taken away. Inclusion is for all. Otherwise, it's selective inclusion, which means you could lose that as well. So I want to encourage you today. This is, as James said, as Malcolm said, this is about everybody. Everyone's got a right to believe. Listen, the one thing that God does not mess with is free will. Sadly, let me tell you what messes with free will. Pharaohs, despots, dictators, lords, bribery, corruption, ineptitude, all of these things rob you of freedom. Sunday morning, I'm going to be speaking a very, very powerful message on Reborn, and we've had a few challenges, I can tell you, over the last few weeks with some of the platforms. Hey, listen, if you follow us, please follow us on Rumble, all the other platforms, just in case one tumbles over. because they don't like some of the things we say. Sunday morning, it's going to be on Reborn. You can look up the times, and it's always up there later as well. We'll be on Instagram, Telegram, Facebook. Also, Toowoomba, please, Toowoomba. Come on, everyone around. You may not like what I say. Hey, just show up and throw rocks. I don't care. I remember a story of Whitfield that a guy said to him one day. He said, Whitfield, I came here to throw rocks at you, to break your head. But when you preached, you broke my heart. So, hey, you're all invited. Toowoomba, go to mesitilive.com. You don't have to register. We'd like you to. And also, next Thursday, get a financial education. Break the chains and the shackles. Become independent yourself. We need to build ourselves some businesses, micro businesses, larger businesses, to be free. And listen, if you're not online these days, you're going to be off track. So thank you all for joining in. You know where to find Senator Malcom Roberts. Follow James on Spectator Magazine and on The World According to Rowan Dean. Thank you, gentlemen, two outstanding speakers and thinkers. I tell you what, I feel like a lion in the midst of Daniels here today. Thanks so much, and God bless you both.
Thank you very much, Pat. Thanks, James. See you, mate.